I will okay, now it's on.
So I have a question about feelings. Whether you like something, don't like something, or you're not sure. Is that happening every second, or do we have actually periods of time when we are free of feelings out of these three categories?
Okay, let us say this, that all of the feelings have degrees of intensity, and that quite often the feelings or the intensity of the feelings is very, very minor. And that if they're so minor, in fact, um, they could be so minor as to be non-existent. They could be also minor enough that they would be completely unconscious, but that it may build up to where it is conscious. Then the next kind would be that it is semi-conscious uh, or partially conscious. And then there is something that's fully conscious. And then there is something that is really screaming very loudly at us. All right. So these would be the various degrees of feelings. And that it has to do also with how um, mindful you are as to be able to pick it up. If we're completely mindful, even if it's kind of screaming at us. An example would be that we can be full on into an argument with someone, and everybody in the room knows that this is a really tense, angry moment. It may not be a loud moment, but it's certainly tense and certainly angry. And somebody turns to you and says, "Why are you so angry?" And the guy says, "Me, I'm not angry. I'm not angry." So we don't know it. We're unconscious to it. Even though everybody else can see it, we can't see it because we're caught up in it. The question is, could we have seen it when it was a whole lot smaller? Could we have seen it at the level of when it was merely a not liking before it grew to the point of anger? Because someone who had been practicing anapanasati for a while, it's unlikely that they're going to be fully into a state of anger and not know it. That normally what will happen when meditators, when we begin to get some meditation time under our belt, we begin to see what the hindrances are, we begin to understand feelings, then it would be very hard for us to be angry and to not know it. But it still may be really hard, even though we know that we're angry. It seems to be still overwhelming, and we can be polite, we can smile, we can tell a joke, and then the anger comes right back out again. And then we can see it again, and then we can say, "Oh no, I don't want that anger, and I'm going to push it down." And then I'm going to be having a nice conversation with the person that I'm angry at, and then out it comes again. So that's the kind of anger that we can have, that we can recognize it, we can stop it, but we can't cut it off. Then the next level down would be that you can see that anger and that you can cut it off in one of two ways. One is that you can say, "I need to take a break now," or "Let me go to the bathroom," and then we just say stay in the bathroom until we do cool down. Or we can, if we have some skill, we can make sure that if that anger starts to come back up with the person, that we can breathe it out and get it out so that it does not come visible again. All right. So then the next level down would be when we're really willing to deal with the feelings, and the feeling of not liking becomes intense. We can actually deal with that feeling. So going back to the state before that, normally it happens that we can see that we're angry, but we're already in it, and so we're running our mouth. The important number one thing to do is to shut the mouth. Be quiet. Take a few deep breaths. All right. So, backing up then to the earlier stage, if we don't like something and we haven't spoken anything yet, the important thing is to not start speaking. And if somebody is pressuring us, say, give me a moment, I want to think about it. All right. And so we can take that time then to decide how we're going to respond. And that's a miracle because most people, once they get into the state of feeling, they don't have any choice over how they're going to respond or not. But if you haven't responded yet, but you can feel those feelings, then you can have a choice about it, about how you're going to respond. A very clear example here at the house with me is sometimes we have a 6-year-old. She used to be 5. She used to be 4. And the further we go back, the more we'd have to deal with it. But she's coming out of it now, partly because we're dealing with it correctly. But she would get her, she would have, maybe you could call it a tantrum, or just get angry. Now, normally what happens when a child gets angry, mom gets angry back. That moms get frustrated when children are throwing a tantrum in the grocery store. Right? So using a kid as an example is because it's really easy for us to get angry back at a child. In fact, I even told my wife a couple of years ago, would you behave this way in front of a cop? If a cop came to you and said to you what Kitty has said to you, would you behave with him the way you're behaving with Kitty? Oh no, for some reason we think that it's okay to let all of our crap out on a kid. And so we do. So if we can in fact see that we don't like what the kid is doing because the kid is crying, she's upset, she's angry, then we can decide how we're going to do it. We can use our compassion. We can use our higher nature. We can begin to tease and joke. But the important thing is to recognize, for the child to recognize that that child has no control over my anger. She cannot make me angry by being angry. And by doing that, we can help the child, but we're also helping ourselves by not getting angry at the child. Okay, so now we can take that issue with the child and we can bring it to our next favorite person that we get angry at, and that's our spouse. And so he's behaving like a 6-year-old. Our natural way is to start getting back angry the way that a mommy would get angry at a 6-year-old. Only you can recognize, oh, that if he's acting badly, getting angry, you can say, okay, be alert, be on guard, bad feelings 5 seconds ahead. So that when those bad feelings come up, you can know it, you can see it, you know the circumstances. That you can, when he gets angry, you can endure him only just a short time. You can get along with him for a little while, and then he'll say something and off you go. So in that in-between time, make sure that you're recognizing, oh, danger zone, danger, Will Robinson, be on alert. Anger 5 seconds ahead. And by doing it that way, that'll help a lot. So that if you do get angry, or that if you do start to have the bad feelings, you can deal with the bad feelings silently inside your own mind without letting them out. Because if you let them out, it's just going to be more gasoline on the fire. And so you can find a smile someplace deep inside. If he brings up a topic, you can smile and say, I'm glad you brought that up. But that'll help disarm it. All right? So the answer to your question is that not all feelings are at the same level of subtlety. And that some feelings give us advanced warning. And that also feelings many times will escalate. They'll start small, get a little bigger, get a little bigger, and now they get really big. All right? And so the question is, when along that path can you wake up to it? Because if you've got advanced warning, you really got an amazing tool. Because you're going to be able to catch the bad feelings even as they arise. Because you've got advanced warning. So with that advanced warning and with other things being very subtle, that as the feeling arises of I don't like it, you can change that feeling or at least use that feeling wisely. You can say, for instance, I don't like it when you say it like that. Why don't you tell me a joke instead? So it's not that you're not being honest. You can be honest, but you don't have to escalate your own feelings to match his. That you can keep yours down just at the level of feeling. I don't like it, but I'm not going to let that feeling of not liking rot into anger, unhappiness, distress. That I can leave it at the level of I don't like it. And you can also choose that you're going to find something useful, valuable, and wholesome so that you can change your feeling. Like you can be really pleased with yourself. Oh, I caught that feeling even before it got out. I was able to stop myself. I'm a lion now. And so now you can find a way of feeling good. You can feel pleasure. So you can actually learn to change and manipulate your feelings. And that the best way to change and manipulate your feelings is through the quality of success. To feel successful. An example of that would be you've already gotten parts of the visa stuff done. So you're already successful. You can finish the visas because you know that you can do it because you've already had success. The same way with the argument with the husband, that you can feel successful simply because you're not getting caught up in the argument with him. So this is a way of doing it. So recognize that some feelings are very, very subtle. And that they will grow or progress. And that sometimes they grow and progress over a course of 5 minutes. Sometimes 5 seconds, sometimes a half a second. It can go from 0 to 60 in a half a second. In fact, that can happen with a sound. You can imagine that you actually hear the sound of something dropping and breaking, and you know what it is, and you know, and you in your mind's eye you can instantly see it, and then instantly you're angry. You know exactly what happened. It's bang, and it happened. I'm angry right now. Okay, only a half a second later, and it's there. So sometimes it can come up really quickly. Watch it, if you can, how it grows more slowly. How you become irritated. You can be in a conversation with your husband, and he says something, you become irritated, and then you say something back, and he gets irritated, and so both of you go up in levels of irritation like that. As soon as you recognize that irritation happening, you don't have to keep it going up. Now you can change it. You can change the direction of it. Does that help answer your question? Because I gave you a more sophisticated answer than I was thinking that you were looking for.
Yes. So you think we're always feeling something, even though we're not realizing what the feeling is at the moment?
Yes, because those feelings, how do you say it? The thing that's really interesting is that when feelings get very, very subtle, then they lose their distinction between I like it and I don't like it because the feelings are very subtle. And so, in that regard, the most subtle feelings have always got to be diffused or non-specific feelings. Or we could even go so far as to call them ignorant feelings because we're not making a choice about whether we like it or not. Okay, this can actually be a state of homeostasis. Now, that homeostasis can not only be at the dead level even, but you can go into a state of homeostasis and still have also pleasure, the feelings of pleasure. You can also have a very slight pain um, and still be in a state of homeostasis. Um, the way that would happen would be that, let us say that you were in the hospital for a particular reason or something, and that a good friend comes in, and now you're enjoying the conversation with the friend. The reason for being in the hospital is still there, but it's now not in the foreground. What's in the foreground is that your friend is visiting, and so now we're not even wanting to pay attention to um, the aches and pains of the body that were associated with getting yourself into the hospital. All right. So this is also, we can pay attention to something in a way that ignores feelings. That in fact, that's really what happens with people when they get angry is that they're paying attention to, if you want to think of it like that, in fact, this is possibly a good introduction to it. They're more interested in winning, which means they're more interested in I am in the sense of conceit. The reason often that we get angry is because we're trying to protect the self. That we feel like that when someone says something uh, that may, in fact, not have anything to do with us, but we take it personally. For instance, the cops always ask for the driver's license and your papers. But you can see someone that when the cop asks him for his papers, he's going to take that. Why do you want my papers? Well, I asked for everybody's papers. Yeah, but these are my papers, you know. All right, so that's when we get like that. What that means is that we get into a state of self-protection, and that by doing that and making sure that we're protecting ourselves from attack, we don't recognize the level of feelings and the anger that has come up in the name of the self-protection. So in that regard, there is actually something deeper than feelings. And that what's deeper than feelings is in Buddhism is what we call mana, that is often translated as conceit. It's expressed as I am, and that it is closely associated with the self-preservation instinct, that we feel actually threatened when there's no threat. There's no threat. Here's a clear example of that. How many times a day do you think one person through, or let us say, the population of a particular area, let's just say New York, never mind America, how often do you think people are angry in New York? So much so that maybe thousands are angry every moment, right? And yet how many people get killed? Not so many. And a lot of people get killed is not because of anger. So, in fact, if you look at it like that, anger does not kill, not necessarily. There is a very, very weak link between anger and killing. And yet, anger always brings up the self-preservation instinct that we feel that we're in danger when someone is angry. We feel that we have to protect the self when there's no danger. Just because somebody is angry doesn't mean that there's danger. Isn't that amazing? Think about that. We feel like that we're in danger when people are angry at us, and so the underlying mechanism that brings up our own danger in self-defense is because we're under the delusion that the self needs defending, and the deeper delusion is that there is a self that needs defending. Now, if somebody's actually attacking the body, that needs to be dealt with. But when somebody is attacking verbally, it's not dangerous. And yet we feel like we're in danger. This is a normal state. So, whenever your husband starts to get angry at you, recognize that you feel like that you're in danger when in fact there is no danger. The intellect, the reality of the situation is no danger. The feeling is danger, 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 all right? And so we have to protect ourselves. When you realize that, we can begin to go underneath the feelings. Because underneath these feelings is that self-preservation mechanism that needs to be protected. And in certain societies, in certain situations, and even in certain places in New York, it's dangerous. Don't go into dangerous places. Because if you go into dangerous places, then you're in real danger. But being in an argument with your husband is not dangerous unless you start pushing him too far. But normally it's not dangerous. If you feel that you are in danger, then things are in fact going to go downhill. It's going to get worse. The more in danger you feel, the more dangerous things will actually become. This is one of the clearest examples I know of in with the phrase of we create our own reality. If we feel like we're in danger, we will find ourselves in actual danger. If we are not, if we don't feel like we're in danger, then we're probably not and won't be.
Can it go the other way, where you actually feel good and it grows and you find yourself in good things?
Yes, exactly so. We create our own reality. If you have the reality that the world is a marvelous place and you're really enjoying it, then you're unlikely to find real danger. Or you might be more alert to making sure that you don't go into dangerous places and do dangerous things. So you're right. We do, in that regard, create our own reality. We create our own danger and we create our own safety. These are mental things, and in fact, a good way of talking about it is the mental attitude. This is why the Buddha had put right attitude, right noble attitude, is second in his list. Right view, right noble view is the first thing on the list, because if we can't see things correctly, then we won't even know how to adjust and modify the attitude to make it noble. So with right view, we can take on a right noble attitude and be out of danger. If we have the wrong attitude, then we'll wind up in danger. Even ordinary right view winds up in clinging, not getting what we want. But when we have truly right noble attitude, or excuse me, right noble view, then we do have, or we develop right noble attitude. And the attitude is that there is suffering. When husband is angry, he's merely suffering. What he needs compassion, not a bang on the head.
You gotta stop using my husband as an example, because if he listens,
you do. And besides, who else do you fight with?
if he listens to these videos, he'll be like, "Did you complain about me?"
No. This is actually just examples. And to be honest with you, everybody fights with the people that we're closest to because we don't feel safe enough to fight with strangers. You just don't go around finding cops to fight with, not more than once. And you don't go looking for preachers to fight with. So there's even songs about it, that we hurt the ones we love. So when I'm talking about wives fighting with husbands and husbands fighting with wives, I'm not even thinking about you and your own particular husband. That's personifying or personalizing it, and I'm looking at general husbands and general wives in general. Because the Dhamma is in fact it's not well taught when it's taught too personally. That it's better taught in general. And so I'm using husband only in the sense of a generalized. I've never met him. I don't know anything about him. I imagine he's a marvelous guy, or you wouldn't put up with him.
True.
But I ask you this in defense, and that is, who else do you fight with?
I mentally fight with, people that for some reason I dislike, but I don't fight with them verbally.
All right.
In my head, I fight with them.
Well, if that's the case, and if you can come out of fighting with your husband, then you can come out of fighting with everybody, because he's your favorite. And I'm not picking on you personally. I would go so far as to say every wife's favorite target of anger is her husband.
Aww.
But that's only true after they've been married for a couple of 3 years. Newlyweds, that's not the case. But after you've been married for a while, then that's who we argue with, simply because we feel safe to argue with them. We get angry with our kids, we get angry with our family in ways that we wouldn't get angry other places. There's also, Eric Berne talks about it and actually has a label for it. It's called the pecking order. And the pecking order will go something like this: that the big boss yells at the manager because of production. The manager takes it, and then he goes down to the shop floor manager, and he's angry at him, and he takes it. And so he goes and he starts talking to the people working on the line, and he's angry at them. And one of them gets angry then at the janitor. And then the janitor goes home and he gets angry at his wife. And his wife gets angry at the kid. And then the kid kicks the dog. And you can see that this sequence of events is done that we feel it's okay to get angry at the people who we're close to, familiar with, or have some sort of control or boss over. So the boy felt completely victimized by the parents in his house, and the only power he had was over the dog. So he kicks the dog. So as we go down the pecking order, that's where we feel angry. We don't peck up. We don't peck on people above us because that really is dangerous. All right. And so that's why husbands pick on wives, because that's just the normal patriarchal society. And I will also go so far as to say that there is a sutta. It's actually sutta number 31 in the Dinga Nikaya, where it says for lay men who follow the Buddha, one of the things that they should do is hand authority of the household over to the wife. There's several things that the husband's required to do for the wife, and one of them is to hand authority of the house over to the wife. Men in America don't do that, but it's very common in Thailand, and that's what gives rise to the matriarchal society, is because the men actually intentionally, through the Buddha, because this is a Buddhist country, do tend to hand the power of the house over to the wives. And I didn't even realize that that was actually a sutta, and that that's what's given rise to the fact that this is a matriarchal society. Normally, in a patriarchal society, is the husband is somehow on top or over the wife in some way or another. I didn't make it like that. I don't like it like that, but that's why I was using your husband as an example, because I don't know of anybody else that you'd fight with. And you verified that. All right. So if you can win your anger, if you can, let's say, master that anger, master those feelings, then the best place to practice it is with the husband, because that's the most likely place for it to be. And that as you become skilled at dealing with your husband in a non-angry way will give you the very skills that you need to lead an angry, free life, so that you don't get angry much. And this is actually not that difficult to do when you have the right skills. And yet so very, very few people, even in Christianity, Christianity is known to be a moral religion. And part of the morality is to be slow to anger, to not get angry. And yet Christians don't have the skills. And the ceremonies of Christianity do not give them the skills. One of the ways of looking at it is in fact that when Protestant made a break from Catholicism, they threw the baby out with the bathwater. The bathwater was all the rites, rules, rituals, ceremonies, and all the other stuff that the Catholic Church to use for its authority. But they also threw out meditation. And so in modern Christianity, we don't have meditation, which is to reflect upon and to delve deeply into the mind. Now, many meditations are meditations that will meditate on a particular topic. The Buddha's meditation is the meditation on one's own mind, to figure out really what's going on, or the right way to ask the question, who am and what am I? Not in the ego sense of, wow, I was such a big guy in that argument, or I was such a big man at that particular race, or I won that title, or he bested me there. That's the normal way that people think about the past and the future. But what I'm talking about here is to reflect upon the mind as it is right now and see who we are, what we are, and we can, the big place to look is feelings. That the feelings are the really important thing, but they are capable of being mastered. You can take over your feelings by watching, by noticing. That normally what happens when we begin to work with the feelings of liking, that brings up issues about materialism, and that things that we don't like brings up issues of anger, frustration, uh, feeling powerless when we want to feel powerful. And then the ignorant feelings give rise to doubt, confusion, misunderstanding, uh, um, despair. So, when we actually begin to manage these feelings, in the sense when I say manage them, I'm only talking about in the sense of seeing. Just see the feelings as they arise. Just know these feelings as they arise. And by doing so, we can change that feeling of liking from materialism into joy. We can take the feeling of not liking and modify that into letting things be okay the way that they are. That I don't like it, but that's all right. But if I'm uh, uh, really clear, then I can actually think of something that I like about what I don't like, and therefore generate good feelings. The important one, though, is this ignorant feeling. That if we can see those ignorant feelings come up, we can actually add joy, and with the joy, it changes from doubt, confusion, and despair into investigation, into curiosity, into wanting to know, investigation. And these are factors of enlightenment. All right. So the feelings we don't want to get rid of. What we want to do is we want to find ways of using them to not cause suffering, but to use these feelings so that they bring on a joyful, happy life. So confusion, we want to bring that into investigation, curiosity. Our joy, we want to take out of materialism in the sense of, how do I get my joy? Oh, well, I shop till I drop. Isn't that the American way? Oh, no, I don't have to shop. I can feel good without material goods. I can become, uh, in fact, this is why the Buddha, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but there is in the Sabha Asava Sutta where he talks about the first three fetters are abandoned by seeing. The next set of fetters are abandoned by using. And what are the things that we use? Well, we have the four requisites to have adequate food, adequate shelter, adequate clothing, and adequate medical. Well, a lot of people in the United States, they don't have those basic necessities. And in New York, they're very expensive. But you do have those basic necessities. But normally what we do is that we will, um, how to say it, we'll err in one direction over another. So that an example of that is because housing is so expensive that people wind up going homeless. But when they go homeless, look at how much stuff they take with them. They'll take a whole house full of furniture and try to put it into a grocery cart or put it into a tent and live out on the street with all of their material possessions. To where the right way to live, if you're going to live homeless, is to live as though you can get up and walk away and carry everything that you need with you. that I was like that when I was traveling in Asia, that I came fully backpacked. But as I traveled, I started leaving things behind. I eventually even left my seat, my cushion, left a set of speakers, left all kinds of things behind because you got to carry them. But when we get sedentary, then things begin to build up. All right. So this whole idea of materialism is based upon the concept that we can get our pleasure through material goods. We were able to do that way, way back when. Probably more than 1,000,000 years ago, we would pick up a stone and beat a bone to get the marrow out of it. And we've been using tools ever since. But what we have not understood is that not all tools bring pleasure. Not all tools bring success. I give you cell phones or smartphones as my example of technology that does not alleviate suffering. 20 years ago, nobody had a cell phone, and everybody was kind of okay. Now everybody has a cell phone, and they're in even more suffering. So our technology does not, by getting more and more and more of it, make us happier. So we need to look at how we can actually get down to the place where we only have what we need. Adequate clothing, adequate shelter, adequate housing, adequate clothing, adequate food, adequate medical attention. And after we get those basic things, then we don't need anything else. And so we can stop using materialism to gain joy because we like an article. You go into the store, you like that dress, you like what it looks like now, so we buy it. And we may not ever wear it, but we liked it when it was in the store. So when we, as meditators though, we begin to recognize, oh, just because I like it doesn't mean that I have to want it. That we begin to become less and less materialistic because we recognize that buying things does not make me happy. That in fact that's an item on the to-do list. It's not on a shopping list. Happiness is on a to-do list. It's not on a shopping list. Happiness is a skill to be developed. And as we learn how to develop that skill, then we are now appropriately using our feelings. These are wise feelings because we can generate good feelings. We can avoid bad feelings by recognizing the success, and that we can use our confused feelings for investigation. So here's how we can turn these feelings from our disadvantage, because right now the feelings manage us, and we live our life trying to manage these feelings where in fact the feelings are managing us. There is a piece of artwork at Wat Suan Mo, and what it basically is a group of stick figures drawings with a circle around them, and the caption is humans arranged by flowers. So this is a human arrangement wrapped up with a bow. Humans arranged by flowers. What does this mean? Well, in Asia and here in Thailand, there is enormous competition over flower arranging. Almost to the point that these flower arrangers, while they're arranging flowers, are nearly ready to kill each other over the competition, right? You probably heard about this. I've never been to any of these events. I don't know anything about it, but I have heard that there are, in fact, contests over flower arrangements. And so this is a method of humans being arranged by flowers. Why? Because the flower arrangers get so into the flower arrangement that it's the flowers that wind up arranging the people into bad mental states. So This is what happens when we are not aware of our feelings. So the liking of the flowers and wanting to be good at flower arrangements winds up bringing on anger, frustration, unhappiness due to the competition. And you could go so far as to say that the second best flower arranger in the whole country is the most unhappy man in the country. Or you could go to something else. The second best chess player in the country is the most unhappy chess player in the country. Because they lost and they wanted to win so badly. So the flower arranging in the beginning was something that we liked, but now it's turned into an unhappy situation for us because of the ego involvement and things like this. So if we can leave feelings directly as feelings and no feelings as feelings, then we have a great deal of choice over what we're going to do about our feelings. It's only when the feelings are ignorant. And so you were asking a question about feelings being very subtle. And I'm saying, no, the subtleness of the feeling is not the important part. The important part is no matter how subtle or intense the feeling is, can we pick it up? Can we know it? Can we see it? That if you have to go all the way to the point that you've stopped yelling at your husband and now you've picked up a hammer and you've got it in your hand, now's the time to wake up. Wake up, wake up. And so we escalate things, and as we do, we have more and more opportunity to wake up. And so if you find yourself angry at all, and you're talking, the first thing to do is to be quiet, to shut your mouth. This is my advice for everyone, not just you personally. It's the same advice. Whenever we're angry, the first thing that we should do when we recognize that we're angry is to be quiet. Take a deep breath. If it's gone too far to where we've already shut up and we've picked up a weapon, now is the time to really take a deep breath. Because that's how things escalate. If we are not aware of it, somewhere along the line, and you know this already, that even when you're in an argument with your husband, one of you will wake up in the middle of that argument so as to put a stop to it. Because if neither one of you wake up, one of you is going to wind up in the hospital. Because that's what anger does. It just gets worse and worse and worse, and hopefully somebody's going to wake up with the intensity of the anger. So that means that you have a marvelous opportunity to wake up to your anger before you ever open your mouth, before you ever answer him. That's the point to deal with it. Why? Because after you're already in a conversation of anger, there's kind of a momentum going. So both of you are now going in this direction of the anger. And so it's really hard to get it to go back in the other direction. Normally what we have to do is to cut it off or stop it. But if you're able, when you're beginning to get angry, if you can see that before you open your mouth, now is the time to make a big change so that you can, before things get a momentum built up, so that you can deal with it at a subtle level. It's easier to deal with feelings at a subtle level. And so the sooner you wake up to them, then the better you're able to deal with them. And if you wake up to them early, then you can deal with them happily. And you don't have to be angry. You can be free of it. Though that's very rare. Only a very few people in New York are completely free from anger. So give yourself a break. And every time that you recognize your anger, you say, oh, I see it. Let me stop it. Put an end to it right here now. So this is the way to deal with anger. But the way to deal with it even better is to notice when the feelings are just, I don't like it. And they don't have to go to the place of you have to let go of it. So the first thing is feelings. Like I like it, I don't like it, not sure if I like it or not. And then the next step would be I like it, therefore I want it. I don't know if I told you this story or not, but there's a very interesting and now quite famous story that happened between Achan Cha and Achan Samedo.
Oh yeah.
Do you know either one of these? Did I tell you about this story?
About the girls, yes.
Yes, about I like it, but I don't want it. That's being able to catch it early. I like it, but I don't want it. All right. So for you, it would be I don't like it, but I'm not going to argue about it. I like it, but I'm not going to wound you with verbal daggers about it.
What about annoyance? So I don't like it, but how would you get yourself out of that?
Ah, well, the first thing is to recognize it if the word is annoyance, and you can recognize, oh, there's that annoyance. I see you. I see you. Ha ha. I can see that annoyance. So you begin to feel immediately like you're in charge. Because if we don't, then the annoyance itself is going to be in charge. In other words, the annoyance comes and you feel like you've got to do something about the annoyance. Yell back, become annoying yourself, something like that. Okay? But your higher self already knows that's not the right way to go. Your wisdom already says, no, don't follow, don't allow the annoyance to be the boss here. So when you feel annoyance come up and you can recognize it as annoyance, become that lion right then. Become the champion right then. Aha, I see you. That's annoyance. There is annoyance, but I am not annoyed. I like it, but I don't want it. Or in this case, I'm annoyed, or let us say the feeling of annoyance is there, but I'm not annoyed.
Mm-hmm.
That the annoyance has lost to the powerful lady. The powerful lady is no longer subject to the vicissitudes of annoyance. That's how to do it. So the first thing is just to recognize the annoyance as annoyance whenever it starts to arise. As soon as it starts to arise, the easier it is to deal with, the sooner you get it because it's small. It's just a little annoyance in the beginning. But if you let that little annoyance have any foothold at all, it's going to be big enough very soon to where it's going to overpower you. And annoyance will turn into anger. You probably have dozens of examples of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is how you deal with it. We can see that annoyance as soon as it arises. To do that, we have to be on guard. There's several things that you can do to be on guard, and that is when people do things that show you. In fact, the little annoyance that we're talking about is like the advanced warning. It's like the cop car that you hear way in the distance before they're banging your door down. So you have just a tiny little bit of annoyance. The husband comes. This is not your husband. It's just the husband. Okay. The husband comes on and he slams his books down on the table. and throws his coat onto the chair. Wife, pay attention now. The next thing that's going to get slammed on the table is you. Be careful. Watch out. So you can see that. You can see some things coming in advance. And you can be on heightened alert. Be on guard for that. So when the feelings begin to arise, you can deal with them. When they're really little, it's really hard to deal correctly with feelings when they're big. And the way that people deal with feelings when they're big is, for instance, when the husband and the wife are in an argument and he says something really stupid, and then he recognizes he said something really stupid, but he can't tell his wife he said something really stupid. So what he does is he walks out of the house and he slams the door on his way out. Well, that was a very good thing for him to do. He should not have stayed into the house, because now he may say something even extra stupid. So this is an example of how people do eventually figure out that they've got to bring a stop to this stuff. That the husband loves the wife, and he knows that he loves her, but he's had a hard day, and so he's going to take it out on her, or vice versa. And the vice versa is just as common. But as a Dhamma dude, skilled in the Dhamma, you can see these things coming in advance. And you can be ready for them. That your own wisdom will tell you what to do if you can see feelings early enough. And if you can't see them early enough, then that means that you're too late, and that the annoyance now is running you, rather than you operating with a small feeling of annoyance. So in that regard, the feelings start off small and then grow and grow and grow. Sometimes that growth takes 5 minutes, sometimes it takes half a second. But they can grow. And what they grow from is from Vedana to Tanha, which is the grasping and clinging, which is to the point that we feel like that we have to act. And that feeling like we have to act is that very annoyance is now in charge. And so we feel compelled to act. Well, that compelling to act is a feeling that we've let escalate. And so you don't actually have to ever feel compelled to act if you can catch your feelings quite early. Mm-hmm. So that you don't ever get to the point of feeling like you have to act. Mm-hmm. Now, what I'm talking about here is inappropriate. Sometimes there may be situations that arise that are compelling that you have to act, because that's the correct and right thing to do. An example would be a dog attacking a child. I'm not going to let a dog attack a child.
Or a child is attacking the dog.
Or the dog, exactly. Or the child attacking the dog. Either way. So there are things that we have to act, because it's necessary, it's right, it's correct. We can see that. But most of the things that compel us to act are basically because of our feelings have gotten the best of us. But if you can catch the feelings early, then they won't. You have a chance to change them. You have a chance to rethink about how you feel about it. Rather than when the aggravation comes, instead of saying, oh, I like that, it's so aggravating, you say, I see that aggravation, I can see it, there's that aggravation. All right, and so that mental change, that attitude change is really valuable, because it keeps you in charge, the lion, not putting you in the victim's position, being a victim, of those feelings. Well, I think we beat this horse to death. I think that we've got
Yeah,
this one.
yeah. So basically want to go over the things that you gave me to practice, watch for feelings and watch the hands, right? You gave me that.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any additional steps,
I'm sorry, what?
additional things I can practice besides those?
Well, you've bitten off quite a big one. These
I know
feelings.
I failed last week on that one.
I wouldn't call it a failure. I would call it a waking up. The failure would have been, oh, last week was fine. Yeah, I did a visa. But in fact, no, the waking up is that you recognize this was stressful. And now you can recognize it was only stressful because you created the stress. By making things important when in fact they weren't important. And that when you get all of the paperwork correct, it will be easy. And so by looking at it that way, you can recognize, oh, you only manufactured your own stress. We do that. That's exactly where stress comes from. It's self-manufactured. All suffering is internal. My dad would say it like this: visas? I'm not afraid of visas. I can lay down and go to sleep beside a visa. Only use that with work. Work, I'm not afraid of work. I can lay down and go to sleep beside work. So that's the way of looking at it. Those visas are not, they're needed. They're necessary for you to jump through the hoops of it. But they're not necessarily the source of your suffering and misery. That your source of suffering and misery was based on doubt about what needs to be done, doubt about the process, doubt about the people who were behind the counter, thinking that they're against you personally. I mean, that's very common. Very common for us to think that the person behind the desk is remembers us or doesn't want to deal with us or whatever like that. Maybe not with you, but when you're old and fat and ugly like I am, get some really strange reactions. But the point is that these people behind the counter don't see us personally. They see us as merely the paperwork and the job to be done. And that they've got their own pressures. And that they're actually in a situation that's pressurized not to cut you any slack, to not have any mercy for you. Therefore, people who go in as victims, hoping that they're going to be able to slide under and get away with something that they don't quite have everything, they're the ones who are going to suffer the most, because the people behind the counter, they've got their own job to do. And so you have to make sure you've got all the right paperwork. By doing it like that, you can see, oh, it's actually easy. It's not a big deal. And I don't know how many years of visas I had to go through in Thailand before I came to that position. And that is that it's not, they're not against me. They just don't like all of the paperwork that I don't like. So we're friends together like that. Neither one of us like any of this paperwork. So great, you can see it. You can recognize the stress. Next time you get yourself into a situation, recognize the stress as it comes before it arrives. Something like stress 5 seconds ahead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whoop. No. Get out. No stress allowed. All right, so that's how we do it.
Yeah.
So I don't have any new things
Okay.
other than stay alert, stay awake. The defilements will come. The Buddha there is translated as adventitious defilements. What that means is that when they will take an advantage, a situation will occur. The defilement will say, "Ah, this is my turn. Let me come up and."
It's never boring, huh?
Yeah, so it's not boring. Even if boredom comes up, you can say, "Aha, I see you. There is boredom."
Yeah. All right, sounds good. I have a quick personal question for you.
Yes.
How did you come to Buddhism?
I was already in India. I had learned a lot about Buddhism before I came, but it was all kind of put into the same sack as Hinduism. There's just all of it was there together. I only started making the distinctions about 1980 because I came across Goenka when I was living in India. And so that's when let us say, uh, I had also, while I had progressed quite a lot in meditation with Muktananda and other teachers, I was beginning to recognize really deep down to my core that magic didn't exist. That was a major difficult for me. In fact, that's part of the reason why, if not the only reason why I was in India. And that I began to understand that, yes, there is magic, and I'm it.
What about the fact that, there are some things that we don't know, they're a mystery. That's kind of magical, like how everything, what's behind everything, and
Okay, all right, I'll agree with that. What you just said is that magic is ignorance. In other words, if we fully understood right to its very depths of what was going on, there would be no magic there.
right. It would be kind of boring.
Only if we think we've come to a conclusion, and by the time we do a full inspection of things and come to the conclusion, now it's time to start over and
Yeah,
investigate it again because
everything changed.
things have changed.
Well, that's kind of magical. Yeah, not in a way that, oh, like psychics and stuff. The fact that everything changes, there is like not mystery, but it's kind of amazing.
All right. Amazing, I'll give you. Because I am too. I'm absolutely amazed. In fact, the deeper I go into physics, the more I understand that this idea of anicca or change in physics, they actually have a word for it now, and it's called causality. And that in fact they're beginning to understand that the law of causality is what determines the speed of light. That there is a causality, and that the Buddha knew about it, and the Pali word is idiopapajayata, and that it basically is what it's talking about is the cause effect. That this causes that. With this, there is that. Without that,
Oh, and who is this? Hi. Hi, sweetie.
Oh, this is the newest member of the family.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's afraid of the bigger dogs. We
yeah.
have two big or two medium-sized females and this little guy, and he's still a little bit afraid of them.
Oh,
But they have been keeping him in his room. But I asked today that they let him out so that we can um, have some familiarity.
mm.
So anyway, this idea back to the cause-effect relationship, the Buddha understood causality and recognized that it is a cause-effect relationship. A causes B. B causes C. C causes D. D may have some influence back on A, but the point normally is that one thing causes another as a sequence of events. Um, that in computer science we would go so far as to call that an algorithm. An algorithm is a step-by-step sequence of events always has the same result over and over and over again. He's got a tick, and he's not used to having the ticks removed. So, um, the step-by-step sequence of events is basically all of the stuff that happens, um, one thing after another. We can see that with dominoes. We can see that when a car runs out of gas. If a car runs out of gas and you just put more gas in it, that's good. But if it runs out of gas and you keep trying to start it and keep trying to start it, what will happen is that the fuel line will get air in it. And then the car is really hard to start because it's got air in the line rather than gas. Okay, so you can see how things go like that. That one thing causes another, which causes another, which causes another. In fact, that's exactly the way that fire spreads. One thing catches on fire, which then catches the next thing on fire, one after another after another. In that regard, time can only go in one direction, and that direction that it goes in is because a cause is a cause and has an effect. The effects do not create the cause. That's the natural way of things going. So in that regard, it's not it's not physically possible to go backwards in time. But that's an important point when we recognize that everything has a cause. And because everything has a cause, that means that everything is temporary.